As we tape this, the president had just announced that he was conceding defeat and would bring the government shutdown to an end. Nancy Pelosi and the new Democratic majority in the House gave Trump a lesson in checks and balances and let him know that he could not hold the government hostage for his own personal vanity project. This was an unmitigated failure for the president, and it caused needless harm to 800,000 federal employees and their families. Now, an hour before the president caved, I sat down with Congresswoman Debbie Mucarsel-Powell to talk about Roger Stone, Venezuela, and, of course, the shutdown. So, Congresswoman, I want to start with the news of the day. We're taping this on Friday. Roger Stone was indicted this morning, arrested. He's been released on bond. What's your reaction to the Roger Stone indictment?
Look, I think it's really interesting that all the closest advisors to the president from the beginning when he announced that he was going to run for president are all somehow implicated into the meddling of the elections in 2016. Having said that, we need to follow the facts, see where they're going to lead us. I think that it's incredibly important at this point to protect the Mueller investigation. And I've said this before, I'm anxious, like millions of Americans, to find out what really happened.
You sit on the House Judiciary Committee. If theoretically there were ever impeachment hearings, it would likely be through the judiciary. I think you just sort of laid out your position. You want to see the Mueller probe completed before you make any decisions about impeachment. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, impeachment is a very delicate process. And I truly believe that if we were to get to that point, we have to have bipartisan support. We have a lot of division in this country, and we need to be united in those efforts. But having said that, we don't know yet what's going to happen. We need to protect that investigation, get the facts, and then follow that path.
All right, I want to turn to the shutdown. Again, we're taping this on Friday. This is the second paycheck in a row now. 800,000 federal government officials have missed, not to mention the contract employees who are also missing. Are we getting any closer to a resolution?
Look, Jim, I can tell you that at the House, we voted 11 times to reopen the government.
Without border wall funding, though, all
exactly.
those votes.
It's just, these are appropriation bills that will allow the government to open. These are bipartisan bills that were passed by the Senate and the House in December. And let's remind everyone, we came in to a government shutdown on January 3rd. And I think that it is the job of the Senate, and we saw what happened yesterday. The Democratic bill with no funding for the wall had more support. So I think that at this point, it's sending a message to the president that we have to open the government before we continue to have any other debates on border security.
There's a CBS News poll that came out a couple of days ago. I just want to highlight a couple of things. 71% do not believe the wall is worth the shutdown. So the majority, 7 out of 10 Americans believe that. But at the same time, I want to say 66% of Americans want Donald Trump to give up on his wall and open the government. But also 52% want Democrats to approve a budget with wall funding. In a way, what you're almost hearing from the public is they just want the shutdown to end. If it means giving some wall funding, so be it. If they want the president to back off the wall, they want the Democrats to concede some wall, they just want the government open. Can you understand that frustration?
Jim, I understand it. I feel it. I've been coming every single weekend making sure that I'm communicating with the traffic control agents. I went and met with the Coast Guard a couple of weeks ago. I think that it is incredible that this president doesn't understand the impact that this is having on hardworking families. Right here in Florida, over 14,000 federal employees. And they're telling me that they can't pay their rent. They don't know how they're going to be able to pay for their child care. They can't fill their cars with gas. This is impacting not only federal workers, but others that depend on federal workers, employees. You know, cab drivers. I've had conversations with cab drivers that they're not able to now pay their bills because it's very slow, especially in Washington, D.C. So I think that it is incredibly important for the administration and the Senate to understand the impact that this is having on everyday, hardworking Americans. And it's impacting the economy.
So if that's the case, why not concede a little bit of wall money?
And here's why, Jim. Let me explain it to you. And this is my personal position. We cannot set a precedent that when an administration, when a president doesn't agree on a policy issue with the House of Representatives or the Senate, he shuts down or she shuts down the government. We can't allow that to happen. We need to open the government. It's the only country in the free world that has a government shutdown, that has ever had a government shutdown. This is incredible to me. So we need to make sure that we separate the two. This is not about, you know, right now he's very focused on a wall. But in 3 months, he could be focused on taking away protections from people with pre-existing conditions and close the government again. We cannot have policy discussions or debates on very important issues under a government shutdown.
Let me just ask you this, because I want to move on to Venezuela in a second, but there's some negotiations hopefully taking place as we speak between, I know, Chuck Schumer and on the Senate side, between Schumer and McConnell. Are you on sort of notice to be able to go back to Washington? You're in the district now. Some people might think you should be sitting at your desk in Washington waiting to vote on a bill if it comes forward.
Yes, we are on call, but I can tell you that we've done everything that we needed to do. We even passed a Homeland Security bill yesterday to fund some of these border security issues that we're talking about. But we've done our part at the House of Representatives. We're waiting for the Senate to do theirs and open the government.
All right, let's turn to Venezuela. Do you support what President Trump has done so far in terms of recognizing the President of the National Assembly, saying the Maduro government is not legitimate, and calling for increased pressure?
You know, it's interesting. I have been standing with my brothers and sisters in Venezuela. I have very, very close friends from Venezuela. I have some family members that actually live in Maracaibo. And the Maduro regime, I've said for many months now, or now for a couple of years, it's a dictatorial regime. It's an illegitimate regime. The National Assembly is the only body of government that falls under the Constitution that should have any power right now. So I do recognize Juan Guaido as the interim legitimate president, but I would like to urge him, the National Assembly, to hold democratic and free and transparent elections as soon as they can. I think that's very important.
But I want to just sort of say, is this an area where you find some agreement with the Trump administration? Do you give the president credit? Has he not done more than his predecessor, President Obama, in terms of trying to bring about change in Venezuela?
I'm glad that he understands the issues facing the Venezuelan people. I also think that we need to allow the Venezuelan people to hold these elections, and that's why I truly encourage Juan Guaido, and I've been talking to a lot of Venezuelan leaders who agree with me that they have to hold democratic elections.
I don't want to dwell on this, but it's been an issue that has come up that you've gotten sort of criticized yourself and Congresswoman Shalala. A picture that was taken with yourself and Danny Glover, and Danny Glover has supposedly been a supporter of both Maduro, Chavez, and Castro. I mean, if I saw Danny Glover, I would just think, oh, that's the star from Lethal Weapon. Talk to me about what the significance of that picture is and how it's being used now.
You know, it's unfortunate that politics have come down to a gotcha moment. I was at this Martin Luther King breakfast. It's an incredible breakfast that Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, has been holding for a few years, and it's the 5,000 rule model breakfast, and they provide scholarships to minority young men so that they can go to college. And there were about 1,000 people at the breakfast. He was one of the honorees, but whether I take a picture with someone that I completely disagree on their politics, I met him there for the first time, and I wasn't the only person that took pictures with him. There were a lot of people there, including, I think, the Miami Herald editors that also took pictures that morning. So I would like to always be judged, Jim, on my actions and my stances on certain issues. I've been very clear from the beginning that I think that the Maduro regime is completely illegitimate, and I've been very clear on my stance on that.
I just want to ask you one last thing, just because it could become a tipping point when it comes to Venezuela. The Maduro regime has ordered the U.S. to close its embassy and remove all of its personnel, and the Trump administration has said no. Should U.S. personnel continue to remain at the embassy? They could be in danger there, and it could become one of those moments that touch off a military crisis then.
You know, my staff is in very close communication with the State Department right now, so we are monitoring the situation on a minute-by-minute basis right now, holding to see what's going to happen. I think that Maduro should take the amnesty that is being offered by Juan Guaido. I think that the American government needs to be very careful in making sure that our diplomats are being taken care of, that they're not going to be in danger in any way. So that's why we're monitoring it.
Should they be removed or should they stay?
Well, right now, I think we're monitoring and seeing what response we're going to get from Maduro. I mean, Juan Guaido is now the interim president, and he's been offering Maduro amnesty. So right now, we're waiting. Anything can change.
If Maduro or the military take action against the embassy, either invade it or harm any of the thing, would you believe that there should be a military response to that?
That's a very good question, and I'll answer it when we come to that. Because I think that for me personally, we need to do everything possible to ensure a diplomatic effort to have peace in that country. We can't continue to support violence.
Congresswoman Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, thank you very much for coming in.
Jim.
It was great.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be right back.